All right. Up next is a good friend, someone that I have. When I first found his website and what he does, I grew a real quick respect for him. But the more that I've met him and learned about him, listened to his show, I learned even more respect for him. He's looking a little clean cut for me today, and I'm not real sure about all that, but I want to be sure this is not his twin brother. Allan, is that you?
It's me, and I'm not very clean cut at all.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
Haven't shaved.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, you see, I'm wearing a polo, and that throws you off.
It does. It does. The sides of your hair is a little clean cut there.
No, I got a haircut like 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
I see. Oh, we're good. All right. Everybody, the non-political Allan Aguirre.
Non-political. You say that because I mentioned when we were talking about doing this. I'm not very political these days. I'm known for being in a punk rock band that was pretty popular, and I've already done that. I've done the whole political thing, and I'm trying to avoid. I have been. I've been avoiding, the hot topics. The hot topics being, let's say Islam in America. I'll post certain things every once in a while on Facebook. The hot topics of like Islam or LGBT. Right? What is it? LGBTQ. I'm not sure what all the initials are this week. You know, I obviously have a position. I obviously have a stance, but I try to keep it private because it's a very convoluted conversation. And so when you bring these things up, you really don't have the opportunity to unpack it. And, you know, we don't, I don't allow, gay bashing on my social outlets because I just don't. I allow Christian bashing because they need to be corrected on their bashing. You can't bash the world. Uh, there's none of the teachings in the Bible give us the freedom or the authority to bash the world. We are supposed to judge the household of faith first and foremost, and the world we're supposed to just leave alone. It's not they're not under the same covenant. That's the main reason why I've been staying away from politics with the Chameleon Church Show here on Lamb Radio, as well as the other outlets that I have. So when you asked me to jump on board here, I was like, what would I say? What am I going to talk about, or what would be my piece of this online conference? And you know, the vast majority of the Torah community reject and they reject and they don't really accept the prophetic movement that's out there. I don't understand. I mean, I do understand why, but they don't. They just don't. You know, here's the interesting thing: the conversations I've had with Christians for the last 30 years regarding Christianity versus the Bible, because Christendom really believes a lot of stuff that's not actually in the Bible. I don't know if you guys have come to that understanding yet. I know many of you have. I'm just teasing. But the conversations I've had with Christians regarding Christianity versus the Bible, and the things that I've talked with them about for, like I said, close to 30 years, I'm now having with the Torah community. It's the same conversation, because a lot of the things that I've discussed with Christians is, context. You just can't pull one verse out of nowhere. You've got to have context, and you just can't pick and choose. You can't. It's not a salad bar. And we see that. I see that. It's a very prominent role in the Torah community regarding charismatica, the spiritual gifts, whether it's speaking in tongues, healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out demons, things of that nature. They deal with this in the same way the Christians deal with Torah. So it's kind of interesting. Whereas we should be, I firmly believe we in the Torah community actually only do like 3 things more than non-Torah observant Christians: tassels, biblical eating, and Leviticus 23. But we've not only does the Torah community at large reject charismatica, they actually have this very unhealthy hatred towards Christendom and Christianity and all things Christianity. I bring all this up because one of the things that I see in the Torah community is for some reason, conspiracy theory is now part of the Torah community statements of faith, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. I thought it was ludicrous in the 80s when I was dealing with Christians regarding it. I've been doing it this long because I know I look really young, but rock and rolls kept me pretty. I don't, but here's the thing: if we're going to be all about conspiracy in the Torah community, the whole anti-NASA thing and the shape of the world and on and on and on, and chemtrails and all sorts of stuff, it's like, what? Do you, as a believer, have any control over what the deep state is doing? Do you, in the Torah community, as a believer, do you have any control over chemtrails or the Illuminati or Rothschilds and all that conspiracy theory stuff? NASA and the shape of the earth. No, you absolutely have no control over any of that. So then why would you make that such a prominent part of your agenda? You have no control over it. I don't suggest people just run out there and read Enoch and Jubilees or study the occult or the Illuminati or all that crazy. No, I don't suggest people do a lot of that because they're straining on the gnat of what the scriptures say. So why would you be over there without any sort of reason or covering or spiritual authority leading you in these things? Why would you even bother getting stuck over there? Because they do get stuck over there. When you have no control, you have absolutely no power or authority to change any of that. Somebody in a Torah community website or forum was talking about some weird thing they were seeing in the sky in their area, and it was like like a tornadic looking thing. I don't know what it was, but then they were saying how jet fighters from the local air base were circling this cloud thing, and they brought up that there was a Mountain Dew billboard in their area that showed green laser beams in the woods, and how this green laser machine was causing this thing to happen in their sky the other day. Now, I think that's incredibly unsound. And if people are going to go around talking like that, they need to be held accountable. Okay, what if we find out that it was just a cloud thing that happened, that if there was no actual government conspiracy behind it with Mountain Dew green lasers? What now? What do we do with you now? Do we treat you like a prophet that's speaking falsely about things? What is there any accountability? Is there anything of that nature? Well, no. People are just going to spew their nonsense, and everyone's going to move on. And here's why I bring all this up. One of the big pieces of the puzzle that the Torah community at large rejects is charismatica, like I said a couple minutes ago. And one of those things that they reject is the 7 mountaintop prophecy that Lance Wallnau and Johnny Enlow brought to the table over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And if you don't know what the 7 mountaintop prophecy is, or the 7 mountaintop, we don't even have to use the word prophecy or revelation or anything like that. Trigger words that trigger people. The 7 mountains. I was exposed to the 7 mountain thing about 12 years ago, and it made absolute complete sense to me. Most people that reject it and renounce it and call it false, whatever, it's the dominionists, believe all the wrong things about it. For example, the majority of Christianity is anti-Torah, and the things they believe that we believe as Torah observant believers, the majority of it is nonsense. It's not true. In the same way, a non-believer isn't a Christian because of all the nonsense Christianity, they've heard about. Oh, about Christian, so they're not Christians because of that. And that's just the way this game is played. I'm not a Christian because, and then half that stuff is like, well, I don't believe that either. Or I'm not a Torah observer because, well, we don't believe that either. In the same way, I reject the 7 mountains because it's all about dominionism, and you guys believe that if we take the 7 mountains, that'll quicken the return of Messiah. Well, we don't actually believe that. That's just not true. But here's why I bring up the 7 mountaintop thing. It is suggested that only 8% or 8.5% of the population has to actually control one of the 7 mountains. What are the 7 mountains? Religion, church, family, education, business, media, entertainment, and government. Now, in 1971, who was it? Who's the guy that they were talking about the trilateral to the TLC, Trilateral Commission? Was it Greenspan or some one of those guys? This is back in the 70s, and he was saying that the role and the goal of the TLC, Trilateral Commission, was to take over the world. And the way you take over the world is you take over the United States of America. And how do you take over the United States of America? We're talking, one world government stuff. We're talking conspiracy theory. So a lot of you Torah people are going, oh, yeah, I'm teasing you again. But so how do you take over the United States of America? Well, you take over their institutions of business, government, education, and religion. They mentioned 4 of the 7 mountains. And this is like way back in 1970, 71. Christianity didn't get any clue about this until about 12 years ago. And the majority listening don't even know what I'm talking about. Well, they named 4 of the 7 mountains. And so it's suggested that only 8.5% of the population needs to actually sit on top of one of these mountains and control it to influence society. Now, there's a movie, I think it was about Wigglesworth. Isn't that the guy that was trying to get rid of slavery in England? I think it was that guy.
Yeah, Wigglesworth.
Right. So he tried getting rid of slavery in England, and he kept being defeated, and he couldn't do it, and he couldn't pull it off. Well, in this movie, there's a scene where a friend of his brings all these people over, invites all these people over to his house. So he opens up the door, and all these people stream in, and they all sit around the table. And if you watch this movie and pay attention to that scene, you'll see that everybody around that table represented they had a leadership role or a leadership position in all the different 7 mountains: education, family, the media, government, finance. And when all of them got together, when those various mountaintop leaders got together on a unified topic, and for example, in this movie, slavery, that's when they were able to abolish slavery in England, and they did it without a war. So do you see what I'm saying? And there's examples of this over and over. Third world countries dying with massive aid epidemics, and when they came up with a program to fight this AIDS epidemic in various countries, when they got the government and the school system and the church and the family all on board with this message, or with this, anti whatever, make sure you're clean, don't have sex with multiple people, or, all the basic common sense stuff. When the government pushes it and the family pushes, it's like a marketing campaign. When everyone's in unison, then things happen and things change. And there are multiple stories of this type of stuff happening. And I bring this up because if we want to see change in the culture, in the society around us, in the world that we live in our fallen world, then you need to be an agent of change. And you cannot be an agent of change if all you're doing is talking smack and complaining and wada. No, that's not gonna, that serves absolutely no purpose for anyone or anything. But imagine if you were in the top 10% in the educational system.
Right.
Imagine if you were in government.
Right.
and working on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C.
Very good.
Imagine if you were in the media and you were, writing articles and writing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Don't be afraid of the world. Go and take possession of the territory that God's called you to be.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Very well said. Very well put together. We need to take a stand. I appreciate it. Thanks a million. We got to close it up. So give everybody your contact information and.
You can watch us on Tuesday morning here on Lamb Radio Network, the Chameleon Church Show, 8:45 a.m. Central, and you can get a hold of us on Facebook. We're on Chameleon Church on Facebook, and etc. etc.
Thank you, Allan. Allan Esquire is. Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right.
God bless.